Bon, bonjour tout le monde, ça va bien? Pour la deuxième activité de la journée 2 du Volet Pro, le titre de cette activité-là, c'est « Politique et média culturel, comment le territoire affecte la pensée ». C'est une activité qui va être modérée et animée par Julia Caron, qui est ici à ma gauche, dont je vais vous faire la courte biographie. Donc, Julia Caron est une journaliste et une communicatrice bilingue basée à Québec. En tant qu'animatrice de l'émission matinale de la CBC Québec AM, elle est connue pour son intérêt pour l'histoire du Québec et du Canada et pour ce que notre passé peut nous apprendre sur le présent. Cela se reflète dans tout ce qu'elle fait, de sa connaissance approfondie des premières technologies, de la photographie et du cinéma, à sa propre collection de vêtements d'époque, qu'on peut voir aujourd'hui d'ailleurs. Ses talents de rédactrice et d'animatrice lui ont valu de nombreuses distinctions et récompenses. Depuis 2023, Julia fait partie d'une cohorte de 6 journalistes canadiens et canadiennes sélectionnés par le Collège Massey de l'Université de Toronto pour le William Southam Journalist Fellowship. Julia, aujourd'hui, sera en conversation avec André-Louis Paré de ESPACE, basé à Montréal, Kathy Zazenski de BLOK Magazine, basé à Varsovie, qui va être avec nous en ligne aujourd'hui, et finalement avec Alexander Scholz du magazine en ligne multiple, Holo Magazine, basé à Berlin en Allemagne, et aussi avec un collaborateur au Canada. Les 3 magazines pourront se présenter leur activité, et sur ce, je disparais pour laisser la parole à Julia et à ses invités.
Merci beaucoup, Amélie. Merci d'être là. Thanks to everyone who's joining us in person this morning here in Quebec City and virtually online. I'm going to start by introducing each of our panelists. Je vais commencer par vous présenter nos panélistes. Je vais commencer avec André-Louis Paré. Il est directeur et rédacteur en chef de la revue ESPACE Art Actuel. On a plusieurs éditions ici avec nous. À titre chef de la revue ESPACE Art Actuel depuis décembre 2013. À titre de critique et théoricien de l'art, il a publié plus d'une centaine d'articles dans diverses revues québécoises se consacrant à l'art contemporain et a signé et co-signé plusieurs projets de commissariat depuis 2005. Merci d'être avec nous, André-Louis. Next up, we have Katie Zazenski, who is joining us virtually. You may have heard her little voice there just a moment ago. I will tell you a bit about Katie before we hear more from her. Katie Zazenski is an American-born, Warsaw-based artist, educator, curator, and writer focusing on alternative models of community building. Zazenski's studio practice is centered around Actually, I was reading the wrong one. There we go. Let me start over. Katie Zazenski is a Warsaw-based artist, curator, writer, and educator whose work is centered on online-offline relations, working collectively and independent and otherwise marginalized communities. Since 2018, she has been director of the independent Warsaw-based art space Stroboskop, and since 2020, she has been a contributing writer for BLOK magazine, and in 2021, she became co-editor-in-chief of BLOK. We're going to be talking lots about that in just a moment. But without further ado, let me introduce us to our third panelist. Alexander Scholz is a Berlin-based writer, curator, and publisher. As the founder, creative director, and co-editor of Holo, an international platform covering art, science, technology, and culture, he specializes in formats and programming that explore interdisciplinary practice, something that I'm sure will echo with many of you here today. Over the years, he curated exhibitions, conferences, and educational programs for organizations and festivals, including ACC, Mapping, MUTEC Montréal, and NUD Forum for Digital Art. Thank you all for being with us. Good morning, Katie. Thanks for being with us. I should say good evening to you. Thank you for being with us. We're going to start with a pretty open-ended question for each person to explain a little bit about their publication. On va commencer en parlant un petit peu de vos revues en ligne et en papier. Et André-Louis, vous pouvez commencer.
Merci. Bonjour. La première, on m'a demandé de vous présenter la revue ESPACE. Bien sûr, c'est peut-être, pour moi, c'est un rappel, c'est des répétitions, mais peut-être que pour vous, ce sera des nouveautés. La revue ESPACE, si vous voulez peut-être mettre le logo. Et puis, on a j'ai fait un petit diaporama un peu basique, là, j'avoue. N'étant pas un super spécialiste, c'est tout simplement des diaporamas que je préparais quand j'étais enseignant. Voilà, donc ça, c'est le logo. Et puis, donc, la revue ESPACE existe depuis 1987. Je dirais, et je pense, enfin, tout à l'heure, je réfléchissais en disant en pensant que, évidemment, le fait qu'elle soit quand même, qu'elle a quand même plusieurs années, elle a été évidemment, donc c'est peut-être pour ça qu'on a une espèce de respect du fait qu'elle soit encore en format surtout papier. Puis de 87 à 2013, elle s'est appelée Espace Culture. Là, si vous voulez passer justement cette diapo, et vous avez là deux images de la première édition d'Espace Culture en 1987 et la dernière en décembre 2013. Et moi, en 2013, en décembre, on m'a demandé donc de prendre la commande de de la revue ESPACE. Et j'ai formé une nouvelle équipe, une équipe qui s'est renouvelée depuis, mais avec qui j'ai élaboré donc une refonte de la maquette préparée par une nouvelle graphiste qui s'appelle Dominique Mousseau. Et Dominique avait travaillé chez Parachute, j'en reparlerai tout à l'heure. Donc, avec cette nouvelle maquette, vous pouvez passer à l'autre diapo. Il fallait tout revoir, le format, le logo, le papier, la mise en page, les diverses sections de chaque numéro. Et ici, vous voyez donc le premier numéro que j'ai produit en mai 2014. C'était un petit clin d'œil, évidemment, au passage. On l'a appelé, le thème était « Repenser la sculpture ». Puis peut-être que quelques personnes ici reconnaissent la personne qui est sur la page couverture, qui est l'artiste Francis Arguin. Ensuite, le dernier numéro 136, celui qui est en cours actuellement, c'est le numéro « Bâtir ». Et la photo, c'est tout simplement une image de l'atelier de co-design avec les futurs résidents de la Borda, animé par la colle de Barcelone. Et qui parle justement, j'ouvre une petite parenthèse, qui parle justement des crises du logement, puis des crises éventuellement des ateliers d'artistes aussi. On a donc revu la mission, le mandat de l'organisme qui édite la revue ESPACE. C'était justement, parce qu'on l'a appelé Espace Art Actuel, on a voulu déborder évidemment le thème un peu trop restreint du mot sculpture, même si c'est un mot que je considère encore très beau, mais il fallait absolument le faire éclater, cette sculpture-là, et aller du côté de la multidisciplinarité, mais tout en maintenant l'intérêt ou l'importance de la spatialité. Donc, c'est ce qui se démarque peut-être des autres revues pour l'espace, c'est justement de rester dans le domaine de la spatialité. Donc, j'arrive, les installations, bien sûr, la sculpture également, mais l'art public, les performances, puis l'art dans l'espace public, etc. Là, vous pouvez justement passer aux trois autres diapos qui montrent en fait simplement quelques exemples anciens, enfin pas très anciens quand même, 2015, 2016, 2019, du numéro de la revue avec des variétés de thèmes, évidemment. Encore une fois, une variété de thèmes qui est quand même soumis toujours, en règle générale, à notre mandat de retenir évidemment l'idée de spatialité. Puis, depuis quelques années, nous déployons aussi des efforts pour rendre accessible et pour le moment gratuitement du contenu original sur notre site Web. Quelques-uns de ces textes sur le Web accompagnent souvent le thème du dossier, mais pas nécessairement. Donc là, vous avez donc ici la salle de lecture. Encore une fois, c'est pas nouveau, mais depuis quelque temps, on déploie quand même un peu plus d'énergie pour... Justement, on en parlera peut-être tout à l'heure avec la notion de frontière, c'est-à-dire que la revue ESPACE en papier, évidemment, a ses limites, et puis peut-être que le fait d'être sur le net, évidemment, permet éventuellement une accessibilité, une visibilité qui est autre. Mais évidemment, ce n'est pas le contenu de la revue qui est là, c'est du nouveau contenu original en règle générale. Par ailleurs, donc, le format papier, comme je le disais tout à l'heure, c'est un peu ça fait partie de l'ADN de la revue ESPACE. Donc, on a encore mis toutes nos énergies dans ce format papier. Et là, je vous présente en rafale, je dirais, à tous les 30 secondes, des images produites par, évidemment, notre graphiste Dominique Mousseau, de différents numéros. Celui-ci, donc, c'est le sommaire du numéro Voix, avec une œuvre de Geneviève et Mathieu. On peut passer à d'autres. Opacité vocale, c'était le numéro Voix aussi, avec une œuvre, enfin un texte d'Alexandre Saintonge, que vous connaissez sans doute. Cher, numéro 132, texte de Luisa Santos. Une artiste, une théoricienne de l'art du Portugal. Un entretien avec Philippe Hamelin de Laurent Vernet, toujours pour Cher. On a fait un numéro osé il n'y a pas si longtemps sur porno. Il n'y a personne qui avait osé faire le pas dans la revue, puis pourtant, il y avait du matériel extraordinaire à apporter. On pourrait, des Grecs jusqu'à aujourd'hui, forcément avoir beaucoup de matériel, mais on s'en est tenu à la post-pornographie. Donc, un texte ici de Claire Lahuerta, une artiste activiste, si je ne me trompe pas, de Berlin. Et puis, ça, c'est l'avant-dernier numéro, Auda, celui de l'automne dernier, avec un texte de Dominique, et puis de Didier, pardon, puis ici un texte de Jim Dropnik, enfin un entretien avec Vicky Sabourin, qui, elle, faisait la page couverture. Ensuite, non, c'est vrai, je pensais que c'était terminé, mais Bâtir, étant donné que c'est le dernier, j'ai mis 2 textes. Et puis voilà. Donc, pour l'instant, on s'arrête avec cette image de l'arrêt.
Merci beaucoup, André-Louis. C'est un survol impressionnant. Je vais traduire un petit peu en anglais juste pour donner un petit peu de contexte à les personnes qui nous écoutent qui sont anglophones. So part of what André-Louis was saying was how the magazine has evolved over time since its founding in 1987. And part of what makes it stand out is the shift from being focused exclusively on sculpture into the emphasis on physical space, but all kinds of contemporary art and different ideas of space and environment and physical environments, playing with the notion of borders. And you already touched on something that's going to come up a lot with Katie and Alexander about the visibility that magazines have online and how that's changed in recent years. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our virtual guest, Katie, to tell us a bit about what she does with BLOK magazine. Katie, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Julia. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me today. I'm super happy to be here. Is the sound okay for everyone? Super. Okay, so I just prepared a little statement and just have two slides to just introduce BLOK today and the magazine. Thank you so much. So I just have on the slide here the kind of mission of BLOK, and I used a DeepL translation into French, but apologies, I wasn't able to check it, of course. And then on the left side of the slide, you have some samples of just some headlines of some texts that we've published recently in the past 6 months, something like this, 6 months to a year, of some of, I think, our more critical pieces, or the more critical pieces that for me. So without further ado, BLOK was established in 2018 as an online magazine focusing on contemporary art and independent discourse in the region currently defined as Central and Eastern Europe. It was published in multiple languages simultaneously, but English was the common language of all the texts. So sometimes if we had a text in native Polish, we would publish it in Polish and also English. So we had that for wherever the texts were coming in from, and English was the kind of unifier. In 2021, we formed a new editor-in-chief team consisting of myself, Eva Borishevich, and Vera Zalutskaya. And when we became this team, we redefined the mission of BLOK, and we decided to focus on art, culture, and politics of the region, loosely defined as Central and Eastern Europe. We expanded our scope of coverage, making sure that we really incorporate as many perspectives as we can, including Balkans, Baltics, etc. And we decided to publish only in English. Eva, Veta, and I represent 3 different regional or cultural regions. I'm American, Eva is Polish, and Veta is Belarusian. And we are all physically living in Warsaw, but represent these very different kind of places in our embodied perspectives. So we bring these different perspectives to the work that we do. And we also have very different professional backgrounds, which include art history, the plastic arts, curating, art writing. And I think this is how all of these different lenses that we bring to the magazine is how we've been able to create such a comprehensive and diverse yet really cohesive journal. We've been really proud of our work covering the Russian war in Ukraine. And since February 24th, 2022, we've published a really great volume of texts focusing on Ukrainian voices and cultural production during wartime, as well as worked to bring nuance and decolonial discourse into the broader non-regional audience. We also have a very unique publishing style, which I believe is one of the key elements that makes our magazine unique, and that we don't publish by issue, and we don't really adhere to any external deadlines. If there's an exhibition that we'd like to feature and it's already closed, we're very happy to share the information. If a critical text was written, months before, but it's still valid conceptually and has valuable content, we will publish it. We aim to be an archive and like a research tool. And we also recognize that many of our readers will not physically engage with the exhibitions or the works that we write about or share in the magazine, regardless of timing, if nothing more than for the geographical constraints that are presented by representing such a large region and having a readership from an even larger region. Every text we publish is read and edited very, very carefully between myself and the author, and we publish on like an as-ready basis. Throughout this process, another very, very important note that I believe we will be touching on again today as well is that we have worked for free. This has been a very, very large point of contention between our editor-in-chief team and the board of the foundation that stewards the magazine. And so despite not being involved in the production in any way, they remain in control of the statutory and financial elements of the magazine. So if I can ask you to switch to the next slide, please. I have a pretty big announcement to make that I shared with Julia in our small conversation earlier this week. And we're slowly sharing this information with our readership and our contributing writers. But you actually are the very first to know from one of our editor-in-chief team. But because of many difficulties in these past years structurally, the most important part that I want to share is that our editor-in-chief team, Eva, Veta, and I have collectively resigned from our position at BLOK magazine. So this puts me in a really interesting position today. Of course, it doesn't change the nature of my past and what BLOK is, but it allows me actually to introduce our new project, which will take the place of our work at BLOK. We are unable to work any longer in this way as we were working at BLOK magazine, and so we are very deep in the process of launching our own platform called Most magazine, which will start to appear publicly in the very coming days. So please stay tuned. Our mission as editors in... Yep.
I was just going to say, can we give you a round of applause for that?
Oh, thank you. I mean,
it's really exciting, Katie.
It's really exciting and really scary, but we have to do it. And the work that we're doing is so important to us that you know, we're taking this risk so that we can continue it. So thank you for allowing me to be this platform to share this. And I just want to say, you know, one small moment longer, just that our mission will be a direct continuation of the ethos that we developed and nurtured at BLOK magazine. And we will be running in a more ethical structure. Most is intended to be a magazine that is, again, a cultural resource and is sustainable for its editors, its authors, its readers in both professional and effective labor. So thank you. And thank you so much for the support.
Thank you, Katie. It's really exciting, and you're touching on many things we're going to get into shortly, but just to make sure that we are also in the loop about the work that Holo does, which is also focused online, we're going to move now to Alex. Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I'm very excited to be here. I want to extend some gratitude, serious gratitude to Amelie for carving out a little panel space for magazine makers and publishers who, I believe we're all in agreement, do an incredibly important job, often under impossible circumstances, and whose work is sometimes, at least it feels to me, underappreciated, if not taken for granted. So it's really important to have these spaces. So yeah, thank you so much. Screen just went dark. There it is again. Okay. So yeah, Holo magazine is a collaboration between myself, Greg Smith, who is also in the audience, and Philip Wisnich. We've been running this magazine since 2012, and we define it today. It started as a periodical. Today we define it as an editorial and curatorial platform that tracks emerging trajectories in art, science, and technology and culture. Again, I'm based in Berlin, but my peers are based in Toronto, Hamilton, and in London. And we've been collaborating for more than a decade now. Is this cropped? Oh, why are my notes there? That's embarrassing.
All is revealed behind the scenes.
I was promised that my notes wouldn't be there.
Transparency.
Okay, well then I'm just gonna do something else. I'm just gonna do this. Here we go. Okay. Microphone still works. What the hell's going on here? Emerging trajectories in art, science, and technology and culture. What does that mean? So generally speaking, we're really interested in relationships and boundaries between disciplines, how different fields interact, interface, and bleed into one another, and what that means for critical creative practice, for research, and activism. Holo is, it started as a print periodical. We've since launched an online magazine as well that does things very differently from what we do in the magazine, but I will get into that a little later. We also produce, curate, and contribute programming, namely exhibition conferences and educational formats to festivals and institutions. Sometimes they look like this. Other times they look like this, which we actually prefer. This is our most recent edition that was edited by Nora Khan. And for us, it was a bit of a pivotal moment because after years and years into kind of working as a small team with lots of contributors, we realized that we have to shift from referring to ourselves as a periodical and doing all these other things, and instead referring to ourselves as a platform that also makes space for other voices than our own, and not just as in a contributing fashion, but actually in a direction fashion. So we really understood we need to cultivate a space where we bring in people and they essentially can take the magazine, recognize the magazine as their own, make it their own, and essentially just handing over the reins. And this is what we've done with Nora, and it worked out beautifully. Here's just a peek inside of the magazine. It was mainly about machine learning, AI, and the algorithmic regime and she brought essentially her network of 15 really stellar writers, artists, and researchers who contributed all these pieces. And it was just a beautiful exploration of the limits of knowledge, the limits of language, and yeah, I don't know, everything in between. And they all really brought a lot of care and a lot of empathy to the topic. So it's not the nerdy magazine that we've done in the past. It's very, yeah, very poetic, very, I don't know. It exudes a certain warmth. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway. So yeah, just to briefly touch on some online formats that have become increasingly important to us. What you're looking at are research dossiers that we do in collaboration with cultural organizations, because we were really excited about exploring different avenues of working with stakeholders in culture, institutions, festivals, etc., because out of our coming from our frustrations of having to do the perennial obligatory festival report, exhibition write-up, we wanted to do something that is a little more in-depth, that is a little more paced and just allows for for a deeper engagement. So we developed this format where we come in as embedded journalists. And we often collaborate, bring in guest writers to develop these formats over a longer period of time. So these dossiers roll out for over weeks or months, in some cases even 2 years. And they just allow for a different kind of engagement for the audience as well. And we can play and experiment with a lot of different formats that can be long form, that can be mid form, that can be very experimental and engaging and bite-sized and maybe even a little bit of fun. Yeah, a good example is the Future Festivals field guide that is currently in progress, a collaboration with MUTEC Festival. We're accompanying a MUTEC-led think tank of 7 festivals, mainly in Canada, but 1 in Mexico, 1 in Germany, that explore the future of cultural infrastructure. It's a lot of reflection, it's a lot of critique. How do festivals need to step up to be resilient and ready for the future? And it's a 2-year research project, and we are in there reporting, documenting, but also contributing and being active part of the conversation. So this is a very fulfilling project. And there's also a survey attached to the project, and I encourage you to go to the field guide and participate. If you enjoy festivals, please share your opinion about the future of festivals, what you'd like to see, where you think festivals are coming up short. Yeah. Another last thing, this is another format that we've developed over the past few years. It's the Holo stream. It's essentially a public bookmarking exercise where we essentially collect all the articles, all the exhibitions, even the chatter online on social media that we find relevant, that we want to hold on to and archive, and we make this in public. And so you can dive into the stream. There are thousands of entries at this point, new books, exhibitions again, and a lot of social media hot takes. So it's actually fun to explore. I always also refer to it as a time machine, because you can go back month by month and kind of refresh what happened a year ago, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the whole point of the exercise. And I think with that I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all 3 of our panelists for that impressive overview. We touched on the importance and the necessity of cultural magazines. On a parlé un petit peu de l'importance, la nécessité des revues culturelles, à quoi ils servent. Mais je voulais juste commencer en vous invitant, le public, mais aussi à nos invités, de penser à la première fois que vous avez lu une revue culturelle, an art magazine, maybe a zine at a zine fair or something like that. Mais moi, je voulais commencer en partageant. For me, it was Canadian Art magazine, which had a piece by Alison Mitchell on the cover, and it said, like, fun fur feminism. And I was like, what is this magazine about? What are these ideas? Things I'd never encountered before. Et c'était vraiment, pour moi, c'était un moment clé. Ça m'a invité à aller découvrir des artistes contemporains canadiens, canadiennes, il y a plus de 20 ans. Alors, André-Louis, je vais vous poser la question en premier. Est-ce que vous vous rappelez de la première fois que vous avez eu un coup de cœur comme ça?
Oui, mais en fait, peut-être que je serais... Oh. J'avais oublié. Oui, mais peut-être que je trahis un peu la vérité, je n'en sais rien, parce qu'évidemment, on peut toujours reconstituer un peu le passé, mais j'ai l'impression que c'était la revue Parachute qui a été fondée en 1975. Vous vous souvenez peut-être du format brun qui était magnifique. Et dans cette revue, bon, moi, j'étais étudiant en philosophie à l'Université de Montréal. Je m'intéressais à la question de l'art. Puis au Québec, dans les universités, l'esthétique, la question de l'art n'est pas très, très développée. Puis la revue Parachute m'offrait cette possibilité d'une réflexion sur les nouvelles avenues de l'art des années 70, de l'avant-garde. Et puis, en fait, il faisait aussi, c'est Jean-François Lyotard, philosophe, qui écrivait dans cette revue au moins un article sur la performance, si je ne me trompe pas. Il y avait Thierry Deduve également. Donc, en fait, c'était déjà des ouvrages de philosophie esthétique et qui m'intéressaient. Parce que, par ailleurs, j'aurais tendance à vous dire que Parachute se voulait vraiment très international. C'était son mandat. Elle voulait vraiment faire éclater la question de l'art et ne pas parler de localité, mais d'aller dans le domaine du transnational. Et puis, les revues à laquelle moi j'appartiens, ESPACE Art Actuel, ont pour origine, et toutes les autres revues québécoises, je ne pense pas me tromper, avec S, avec Vie des Arts, avec Ciel Variable, avaient des mandats de défendre, et avec raison, l'art québécois, les artistes québécois, parce qu'ils n'avaient pas leur place encore dans les années 70-80. Et la revue Espace, justement, ça je pourrais le dire plus tard, mais ses origines, c'est le Conseil de la sculpture du Québec. Et si on regarde S, c'était des étudiants qui veulent prendre la parole, mais en leur nom. Et puis, Vie des Arts défendait évidemment les arts de la peinture québécoise surtout, etc. Puis il y avait etc. justement aussi qui défendait, elle aussi, c'était les artistes de la GAC à l'époque. Enfin bref, il y avait seulement ça, le Parachute qui voulait s'ouvrir au monde, et puis ça m'a beaucoup plu à ce moment-là.
Vraiment des pionniers.
Et maintenant, on essaie de suivre leurs traces, quelque part.
Following in the footsteps of the people who carved out the space initially. Katie, how about you when it comes to reflecting on some of the first cultural magazines you encountered?
I remember flipping through Art Forum, like like that's my kind of like deepest memory, I think. A lot because of the format, right? Because it's such a big magazine always, like it's so weighty, it's such a physical thing. I don't have a specific memory of like, a specific exhibition that was profiled or a specific cover. But I remember my sculpture professor, and I think this is also, why too, is that, I was looking at it for the exhibitions as a young maker, in university studying sculpture. And so my professor would bring in her back issues for us to kind of comb through. And so maybe this is why the physical experience of the magazine is more kind of stuck to me than the kind of visual or conceptual experience of it.
Thank you, Katie. And Alexander, how about you?
I'm sad to say that there's no art magazine that I can remember as having discovered and being really taken away with or taken by. Partially because in my formative publishing years, which would be late 90s, 2000s, art magazines in Germany were just super conservative and mainly catered to collectors, institutions, the establishment, if you will. And they, you got that vibe from them immediately, even on the cover. So I never really felt drawn to them. Also, I have to say, I don't come from the arts. I have a film and design background, and my peers, they come from architecture. So we kind of came came to the arts like through new media, through kind of a new experimental creative practices that deployed computers and technology throughout the 2000s. And so the stuff that I was interested in, all the art magazines that I encountered at the time just wouldn't cover that, right? So I was much more drawn to electronic music magazines that had kind of a broad overlap with what I was interested in, and covered that as well. So I could name drop Debug, which has been super influential in Germany, and because they deployed this amazing newspaper format. It was a magazine that was just really big, newspaper on paper, like this rough paper, and for something that is about technology and digital culture, it was just like, it felt like just the right twist to make it interesting, and it had such character, and so yeah, I have fond memories of that. I will say there's another art magazine that I do remember that I shared with you, and it's the Looking at Art edition of Colors magazine, which is a cultural magazine, and I mean, Colors at that period was I forget when it came out, sometime in the 2000s, I think, and it reminded me at that time that you can make a magazine about art and about engaging with art and make it interesting and fun and experimental and challenge the audience. For example, the cover was, and that what drew me in initially was. Just an empty, like an illustration of a little person sitting in front of an empty ball, and there were stickers that came with the magazine, like your tropes of successful artworks or popular artworks, and you could populate the wall with those stickers, kind of curate the cover yourself. And the magazine was essentially, that edition was about how we teach art, how we buy art, how we sell art, how we steal art. So it was a really whip-smart, intelligent way of just kind of picking apart the art world. And I feel a lot of times, and that's something that we try to do with Holo, it's like, think about ways to engage the audience in a different way. Not everything has to be a 4,000-word essay.
Right.
There are so many different angles on things and formats that you can deploy and play with, just to kind of also draw in new audiences, right? And for example, an example how we try to implement that kind of thinking in Holo is in our second issue that was all about randomness, which is very important for computational creative practice. We included a paper random number generator for people to assemble themselves and play around with and generate random numbers the old school way. So stuff like that, just to get people thinking and engage with the topic differently. So that's is really important to us, and it's missing, particularly in the arts and in the media arts as well. That is very academic and
can be a little austere at times. Thank you for those reflections. I think I have time for one last question so we can get into some of the meat of it. And I actually want to start in reverse order, if that's okay. So I'm going to start with you, Alex. On a le temps pour une dernière sujet de discussion pour pouvoir explorer un petit peu le contexte géopolitique dans lequel nos panélistes œuvrent. Je pense surtout, we've spoken a lot about the importance of faire rayonner l'art québécois à l'international, ways of showcasing Quebec art internationally, but I wanted to start with you, Alex, and Katie. I was hoping to have your reflections on it too. How your own geopolitical background, you mentioned super conservative art magazines in the past in Germany, how does that shape how you do your work at Holo, taking into consideration what's happening in the world and how that influences how you approach things?
Yeah, I mean, to some degree I answered that question already, that it has shaped like how I approach editorial in general. More broadly speaking, I grew up in East Berlin, so that makes it really easy for me to fly my anti-capitalist flag within Holo and be skeptical of power structures, of big tech narratives, and we do that very liberally within the Holo coverage. And one thing that I forgot to mention that is really important about the Holo stream, where we reference, where we bookmark in public, is for us as a small team with very few resources, a really great way to platform people and platform voices that we find critically important, especially now. So because we're not able to commission like great writing that touches on these things, but we can reference that writing elsewhere and pick a great quote, and then it's there, and that also kind of allows us to articulate our own political positions and our values on a daily basis.
And not even just written work. You also link to podcasts. I took a look. I invite you all to take a look at Holo and at BLOK online and ESPACE online. But there were quotes from a Canada Land podcast based here in Canada. And I went back in the archives a little bit and saw like a link to an article in the New Yorker that I'd missed. And that was quite interesting to revisit much later. So that's a way of really using that space. I appreciate that. And Katie, how about you? You mentioned that the 3 co-editors of BLOK come from different backgrounds. What kinds of discussions do you have as a team when you're deciding what to center and what to focus on in your work?
Yeah, I think honestly for me it's been really nice, and it's been really refreshing working with Eva and Veta because of how differently we approach things, and how, of course, you know, as I mentioned also, we are all physically based in Warsaw. We are all women, we are all working in culture, so we do have a lot, and we're all, you know, in a similar age, so we do have many overlaps. Enough to kind of keep us together, right? But then we also have enough differences that really, like, if we, you know, if I feel strongly about covering something, and the way it usually works is that, like, you know, the 3 of us, we consider all content together, and really, if we have strong opinions about something, that we must share it, and the other 2 are, you know, not so sure, we will always lean on the person who feels very, very committed that this is something we need to share, or if this is something that we absolutely must not publish, you know, for whatever reason. So it's I really value what they bring to the table and their life experiences and their different lenses. And something that I wanted to share also, based off what Alexander was just saying, again, because of limited resources and the fact that it's the 3 of us doing literally everything related to the magazine, from checking emails to editing to fundraising to publishing the text, you know, and everything in between. You know, we really we don't have money. We don't get paid. We don't have money to offer our contributing writers, and so we try our best to kind of make up for that in the ways that we can, through really caring for the work that we do, and really, you know, so we always encourage young writers maybe who don't have a lot of experience, if they want to take a risk and publish something, you know, we work very closely in developing texts and kind of offer our expertise and try and make it as much of an exchange as we can. So that it's not just, you know, okay, we give you this visibility, but we also help you understand how to maybe write better or present your topics in a more clear way. But in terms of, like, more strictly politically speaking, I think that is something that we mentioned in our private conversation earlier this week when we were getting to know each other. I remember saying something along the lines of that, you know, we don't, you know, we do cover a lot of political topics, because especially in recent years in this region, in Poland specifically, you know, it's impossible to separate art from politics, and art and activism, and these lines have just become very deeply blurred. And I don't think, I said we happily, you know, cover this. I don't think it should be extracted and removed from our conversations. And so we feel it's very important to cover, like I said as well in the intro, what's happening in Ukraine, and how cultural workers are responding, and how people are living through these experiences and still producing culture, and how culture is archived during war times, et cetera. So, you know, we do our best to not shy away, and we try and do as much as possible with the resources that we have.
Thank you so much, Katie. I was just looking back at my notes from that conversation, and I feel like we could do an entire panel discussion just on funding, money.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people who can relate to what you're sharing. And I wrote down something that you said, which was also about working for free, and the idea that if something is done for free, it has less value, but we're also talking about the value of the work that you guys are doing. André-Louis, I'm going to give you the last word. Je vais vous donner le dernier mot. On a parlé un petit peu, Alex et Katie ont un peu parlé du contexte géopolitique de leur travail, un petit peu le choix de publier en anglais pour rejoindre le plus gros public possible. Et en tant que francophone québécois qui œuvre dans ce domaine depuis 50 ans? I don't want to age you too much.
Faites le calcul, la revue existe depuis 87.
87.
Mais donc, on approche du 40e anniversaire, mais S aussi a atteint son 40e anniversaire.
Ouais. Alors, la dernière question, c'est un peu quels sont les dilemmes importants de prendre en considération en publiant ESPACE?
Oui, bon, évidemment, au départ, c'est une revue francophone et puis elle demeure essentiellement francophone. Enfin, la direction est francophone. Puis on est au Québec, mais évidemment, c'est sûr que la situation géopolitique fait en sorte que les revues francophones au Québec doivent quand même essayer de s'exporter. Puis la seule manière de s'exporter, c'est évidemment de passer aussi par l'anglais. Donc la revue a quand même ses collaborateurs anglophones. Enfin, on est bilingue, mais c'est pas simplement qu'on traduit du français à l'anglais, mais on traduit aussi de l'anglais au français pour que, évidemment, le lecteur francophone puisse avoir accès aussi à la pensée de nos critiques d'art anglais et tout. Puis bon, pour moi, ça se passe bien, mais c'est sûr que ça a des coûts parce que est-ce qu'il y a beaucoup de pays dans le monde où les revues sont bilingues? J'en connais pas beaucoup. Je connais une revue catalane, JOUR, si je ne me trompe pas, elle est trilingue, catalan, espagnol, anglais. Ils se permettent ça, mais c'est des coûts énormes. Je ne sais pas comment ils font pour se financer. Au Québec, en effet, les revues québécoises sont les seules à devoir, si elles veulent vraiment s'exporter, être traduite et se traduire, donc être traduite. Donc, et nous, on le fait même pas en entier, on fait surtout le dossier, mais le dossier tient à 3/4 du numéro, donc c'est beaucoup. Ensuite, il y a des sections qui peuvent rester tout simplement dans la langue de l'auteur, l'autrice. Nous, on a décidé, quand je suis arrivé, en 2014, j'ai décidé, évidemment, j'avais toujours pensé, si je devais devenir directeur d'une revue, d'aller en Europe. Donc, on est avec les presses du réel, on est au moins déjà connu en Europe. On est connu évidemment au Canada anglais, mais il y a encore énormément de travail. C'est tout le problème de la diffusion qui importe. Des fois, je me dis, est-ce que Holo, BLOK ont plus de popularité? Sans doute, mais même moi, je ne connaissais pas BLOK avant-hier, disons, et je ne connaissais pas non plus Holo, pardon, et BLOK avant-hier. Donc, et là aussi, on a besoin de faire de la recherche éventuellement, ou enfin en entendre parler, il faut que ça soit diffusé. La revue ESPACE, encore une fois, c'est sûr que la version papier, elle n'est pas toujours accessible, et c'est pour ça qu'on pense de plus en plus aller, pour l'avenir, évidemment, aller du côté aussi du site web, en tout cas, améliorer notre importance et notre vivacité sur le web pour que les gens puissent prendre connaissance qu'il existe aussi une version papier. Parce qu'avec, évidemment, les gens peuvent l'acheter, peu importe d'où ils sont, ils pourront toujours l'acheter. Alors voilà, je ne sais pas si je réponds un peu à ta question.
Non, merci beaucoup, André-Louis. We are out of time. But I want to thank everyone for their reflections. There's so much more we could get into, but thank you so much to our panelists. André-Louis, Paré, merci beaucoup. Alexander Scholz de Holo, merci. And Katie Zazenski joining us live from Warsaw. And remind us again the name of your new magazine, Most?
Yes, thank you. It's Most, M-O-S-T, Most Magazine. So stay tuned, please.
Thank you to everyone. And thank you to Amélie Laurence also for helping us discover and make these links. Like André-Louis said, he's just discovering Holo and things like that. So thank you so much for the programming of the festival and the panelists. And this has been the beginning of day 2, connecting knowledge, inventing new narratives as part of the Volet Pro. Merci, Amélie.
Merci à toi, Julia. Merci à tout le monde. On va prendre une pause dîner. On va se retrouver à 1h pour une conférence avec Corinna et l'Apostole qui vient nous parler du projet Immerse and Beyond qui va durer entre 1h et 1h45. Donc, bon appétit tout le monde!